The collision, the rain hammered against the windshield of Marcus Blackwood's silver Aston Martin as he weaved through the congested downtown traffic. His phone buzzed incessantly against the leather dashboard, each ring marking another million-dollar decision that demanded his immediate attention. At 34, Marcus had built Blackwood Industries from a small startup into a tech empire worth billions. But tonight's acquisition deal would cement his position as the youngest tech mogul in corporate history. Close the Meridian deal tonight, or we lose everything. His father's voice echoed in his memory, even though Thomas Blackwood had been dead for 3 years. The old man's expectations still drove Marcus with relentless intensity, pushing him toward success that always seemed to demand more sacrifice. Thunder crashed overhead as Marcus pressed the accelerator, his mind racing through contract clauses and merger details. The city lights blurred past his windows like streaks of liquid gold, and he barely noticed the storm intensifying around him. He was supposed to be at the Meridian Industries headquarters 20 minutes ago, were nervous. Executives waited with signatures that would change everything. His phone rang again, and Marcus reached for it without taking his eyes off the road. The caller ID showed Victoria Blackwood, his mother, calling from their family estate in the Hamptons. She had been pressuring him for months about his engagement to Rebecca Sterling, the senator's daughter, and Marcus knew this call would be another reminder of his obligations to the family legacy. "Not now, mother," he muttered, declining the call and focusing on the wet asphalt ahead. But the momentary distraction was enough. The traffic light ahead had turned red, and the car in front of him had stopped suddenly. Marcus slammed on the brakes, but the rain-slicked streets offered no mercy. The Aston Martin hydroplaned, spinning wildly across the intersection. Time seemed as slow as Marcus fought to regain control, his hands gripping the steering wheel as the world tilted around him. The sound of screeching metal filled his ears as his car collided with a delivery truck, then careened into a concrete barrier with a sickening crunch. Glass shattered around him like deadly confetti, and Marcus felt a sharp pain shoot through his skull as his head struck the side window. The smell of gasoline and burnt rubber filled his nostrils as steam rose from the destroyed engine. His vision blurred, and he tasted blood on his lips as consciousness began to slip away. Through the shattered windshield, he could see people rushing toward the wreckage, their voices muffled by the ringing in his ears. Someone was shouting about calling 911, and Marcus tried to speak, tried to tell them he was fine, but no words came out. The world was spinning, and all he could think about was the meeting he was going to miss, the deal that would slip through. His fingers, the last thing he remembered before darkness claimed him, was the sound of sirens growing closer, their wailing cry cutting through the storm like a promise of salvation he wasn't sure he deserved. 15 minutes later, the ambulance raced through the rain-soaked streets toward Metropolitan General Hospital, where Dr. Sophia Vale was just beginning her night shift in the emergency department. She had no idea that fate was about to deliver the one person she had spent 7 years trying to forget, as the paramedics burst through the automatic doors with their unconscious patient. Sophia moved with practiced efficiency, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, her compassionate eyes already assessing the situation. She had seen countless trauma cases, but something about this night felt different, as if the storm outside had stirred up more than just wind and rain. The patient on the stretcher was covered in blood, its expensive suit torn and stained, but Sophia focused only on his vital signs and the urgency of saving his life. She had no way of knowing that the man whose life hung in the balance was the same person who had once held her heart in his hands, only to walk away when she needed him most tonight. The past and present were about to collide with the same devastating force as the accident that had brought them together again. The harsh fluorescent lights of trauma Bay 3 cast stark shadows across Marcus Blackwood's bruised face as Dr. Sophia Vale worked methodically to assess his injuries. His dark hair was matted with blood, and an oxygen mask covered the lower half of his face, but something about his profile nagged at her consciousness like a half-remembered dream. Patient is a 34-year-old male, multiple lacerations, possible concussion, and suspected internal bleeding, reported Nurse Emma Chen, hanging the IV bag with practiced efficiency. Paramedics said he was unconscious at the scene, For approximately 10 minutes. Sophia nodded, her trained hands moving across Marcus's chest, checking for broken ribs and internal injuries. His expensive watch had been shattered in the crash, its face cracked like a spider web. But she noticed the elegant silver band beneath, the same style he had always preferred, a classic and understated despite his wealth. As she lifted his eyelids to check his pupil's response to light, Marcus stirred. A low groan escaped his lips and his eyes fluttered open, revealing the deep blue irises that had once made her heart race during late-night study sessions in medical school. "Sir, can you hear me?" Sophia asked, her voice professionally calm despite the sudden thundering of her heart. "You've been in an accident. You're at Metropolitan General Hospital." Marcus blinked slowly, his vision clearing as he focused on the face above him. Even through the haze of pain and medication, he recognized those warm brown eyes that had haunted his dreams for 7 years. The same gentle curve of her lips, the same determined set of her jaw when she was concentrating. But there was something different now, a hardness that hadn't been there before. "Sophie," he whispered, his voice hoarse and uncertain. The use of her old nickname hit Sophia like a physical blow. Only he had ever called her that, and hearing it now brought back a flood of memories she had buried deep in her heart. Her hands trembled slightly as she continued her examination, but she fought to maintain her professional composure. "Oh, Marcus," she said quietly, her voice carefully controlled. "Let's focus on your medical condition right now. You've sustained significant trauma." But Marcus wasn't ready to let the moment pass. Despite the pain shooting through his skull and the difficulty breathing, seeing Sophie again felt like finding a missing piece of his soul. She looked more beautiful than he remembered, her face showing the maturity that came with years of saving. Lives, but her eyes held a sadness that made his chest tighten with guilt. "I can't believe it's really you," he managed to say, trying to sit up despite the dizziness. "After all these years, what are the odds?" "Lie still," Sophia commanded, gently pressing him back down. "You may have a concussion, and we need to run more tests." As she worked, memories flooded back unbidden. She remembered their first meeting during anatomy class at Columbia Medical School. How Marcus had been the brilliant student everyone either admired or envied. He had approached her after a particularly difficult exam, offering to share his notes and buy her coffee. That coffee had turned into dinner, which had turned into long walks through Central Park. Talking about their dreams of changing the world through medicine, she remembered the night he had first kissed her. Standing outside her tiny apartment, after studying for their boards until 3 a.m., the kiss had been gentle, tentative, full of promise. She remembered how he had whispered against her lips that he was falling in love with her, and how her heart had soared with the possibility of a future together. But most vividly, she remembered the morning she had awakened in his arms for the last time, 8 years ago. They had just finished their residency applications. Marcus had talked excitedly about matching at the same hospital, about building a life together. She had fallen asleep feeling more secure in love than ever before. When she woke up, he was gone. Not just from her bed, but from her life entirely. His phone went straight to voicemail. His apartment was empty, and his friends claimed they didn't know where he had gone. 3 weeks later, she had seen the announcement in the business section of the newspaper. Medical student leaves residency to take over family business empire. The betrayal had been devastating, but the discovery she made 2 months later had been life-changing in ways she never could have imagined. "Dr. Vale," Nurse Chen's voice snapped Sophia back to the present. "His CT scan is ready for review." Sophia looked down at Marcus, who was watching her with an intensity that made her stomach flutter despite her anger. "I'll be right back," she told him, her voice steady. "Try to rest." She walked toward the radiology department. Marcus called after her. "Sophie, wait. I know you probably hate me and you have every right to, but seeing you again, I never stopped thinking about you, not once in all these years." She paused at the doorway, her back to him. "Some things are better left in the past, Marcus. Some wounds never heal." In the radiology room, Dr. Harrison Wells, the chief of surgery, was already examining Marcus's scans. "Good news," he said as Sophia approached. "No signs of serious brain injury, but I want to keep him overnight for observation. There's some swelling, and his blood work shows he's been under significant stress." Sophia nodded, but her mind was racing. She had managed to avoid Marcus Blackwood for 7 years, building a new life for herself and her son. She had become one of the most respected emergency physicians in the city, known for her calm under pressure and her ability to save lives that others might have given up on, but seeing him again had awakened feelings she thought she had buried forever. The way he looked at her, the sound of his voice, saying her name. The familiar scent of his cologne, even through the antiseptic smell of the hospital. It all brought back the love she had tried so hard to forget as she returned to his bedside. To deliver the results, Marcus reached out and gently caught her wrist. His touch was warm and familiar, sending electricity through her entire body. "Sophie, please," he said softly. "I know I hurt you. I know I made the worst mistake of my life when I left. Can we talk? Really talk?" She looked down at his hand, on her wrist, then up into his eyes. For a moment, she saw not the billionaire CEO who had abandoned her, but the young man who had once promised to love her forever. "You're going to be fine," she said, gently pulling away from his grasp. "Dr. Wells wants to keep you overnight for observation. I'll check on you later." She walked away. Marcus watched her go, his heart breaking at the pain he could see in her posture. He had spent 7 years trying to convince himself that leaving her had been the right choice. That duty to his family and their business empire had been more important than love. But lying in that hospital bed, watching the woman he had never stopped loving walk away from him again, Marcus realized that some mistakes were too big to live with, and some loves were too deep to forget. The next morning brought a gentle spring sunlight that filtered through the hospital window, casting warm patterns across Marcus's face as he dozed fitfully in the narrow bed. His head still throbbed, but the pain was manageable now, replaced by a different kind of ache, the hollow feeling in his chest every time he thought about Sophia's wounded expression. He had barely slept, his mind replaying their brief encounter over and over again. Every word she had spoken, every careful distance she had maintained, told him how deeply he had hurt her. The professional mask she wore couldn't hide the pain in her eyes, and Marcus realized that his leaving had wounded her in ways he had never fully comprehended. Around 10 a.m., he heard familiar voices in the hallway outside his room. Sophia was speaking to someone in hushed tones, her voice carrying the gentle patience he remembered from their studying sessions together. "Remember what we talked about, sweetheart? Mom has to check on a patient, but you can sit quietly and draw while I work. Mrs. Patterson will be here soon to take you to the park." Marcus's heart clenched at the tenderness in her voice. He had always imagined Sophia would make a wonderful mother someday, and hearing her speak so lovingly to a child brought back memories of their late-night conversations about the future. They had planned together. The door opened, and Sophia entered, wearing fresh scrubs, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. Behind her, a small boy with tousled dark hair clutched a coloring book and a box of crayons to his chest. The child looked to be about 7 years old, with bright, curious eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. "Good morning, Marcus," Sophia said professionally, checking his chart. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," Marcus replied, but his attention was drawn to the boy who had wandered over to the window, gazing out at the city skyline with fascination. "Is this my son?" Sophia finished, her voice carefully neutral. "Oliver, come meet Mr. Blackwood. He's the patient I told you about." Oliver approached the bed with the fearless curiosity of childhood, his small face tilted upward to study Marcus with intense concentration. As he drew closer, Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. The boy's features were strikingly familiar, the same strong jawline that Marcus saw in the mirror every morning, the same thick, dark hair that refused to stay neatly combed, and most startling of all, the same deep blue eyes that had been passed down through generations of Blackwood men. "Hello," Oliver said politely, extending his small hand for a handshake. "Mama says you were hurt in a car accident. Are you going to be okay?" Marcus shook the boy's hand, marveling at how small and warm it felt in his own. "I'm going to be fine. Thanks to your mama. She's a very good doctor." Oliver beamed with pride. "She's the best doctor in the whole hospital. She saves people every day." He paused, studying Marcus's face with the unfiltered honesty of a child. You have the same eyes as me. Look, he pointed to his own eyes, then to Marcus's. They're exactly the same color. The innocent observation hit Marcus like a physical blow. He looked from Oliver to Sophia, who had gone very still beside the bed, her face pale with what looked like panic. The timeline was too perfect, too precise to be coincidence. Gosh. If the boy was 7 years old, he would have been conceived. Right around the time Marcus had left for the last time. Sophia, Marcus said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Is he... ... Oliver, honey? Sophia interrupted quickly, her voice strained. Why don't you go sit by the window and color for a while? Mama needs to check Mr. Blackwood's bandages. But Oliver was still fascinated by Marcus, seemingly drawn to him by some invisible connection. What kind of work do you do, Mr. Blackwood? Are you a doctor like Mama? I run a computer company, Marcus managed to say, never taking his eyes off Sophia's face. He could see the truth written in her expression, the fear, the protectiveness, the desperate desire to shield her son from complications he was too young to understand. That's so cool. I love computers. Mama got me a tablet for my birthday, and I'm learning to code. Maybe you could teach me sometime? The casual suggestion from the boy who might be his son nearly broke Marcus's heart. He thought of all the birthdays. He had missed all the milestones he had never witnessed, all the bedtime stories he had never read. If Oliver was truly his child, then Marcus had been living a lie for 7 years, convinced he was building an empire while missing out on the most important thing in his life. Oliver, Sophia said more firmly, please go color now. Mr. Blackwood needs to rest. As the boy reluctantly settled into the chair by the window, Marcus caught Sophia's wrist gently, the same way he had the night before. We need to talk, he said in a low voice that wouldn't carry to Oliver, please. Sophia's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Not here, not now. Is he mine? Marcus asked, his voice breaking slightly on the words. For a long moment, Sophia stared at him, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. The confirmation hit Marcus like a tsunami of emotion. Joy, grief, anger, and love crashed over him in waves. He was a father. This beautiful, intelligent, loving child was his son. And he had missed the first 7 years of his life because he had been too cowardly to fight for what mattered most. Why didn't you tell me? He whispered, his voice raw with pain. Tell. You what? Sophia's voice was barely controlled. That I was pregnant? I tried, Marcus. I called you 100 times. I went to your family's offices. I was told you were unavailable for personal matters and that all communication should go through your attorneys. Marcus closed his eyes, remembering the instructions he had given his assistant during those first months after he left medical school. He had been so determined to cut all ties with his old life that he had blocked out everything and everyone who might tempt him to return. He had never imagined that Sophia might be trying to reach him with news that would have changed everything. I didn't know, he said desperately. Sophie, I swear to you, I didn't know you were pregnant. If I had known... ... double quotes. What? She challenged, her voice rising slightly before she caught herself and glanced toward Oliver. What would you have done? Differently? Would you have given up your billions? Would you have chosen us over your family's empire? Marcus looked at her, then at Oliver, who was quietly coloring a picture of what looked like a superhero. The boy hummed softly to himself, completely absorbed in his artwork, unaware that his entire world might be about to change. Yes, Marcus said with absolute certainty, I would have chosen you. Both of you. I would have chosen you over everything. Sophia's composure finally cracked, and tears spilled down her cheeks. Well, it's too late now, raised him alone, Marcus. I was there for his first steps, his first words, his first day of school. I held him when he had nightmares and cheered when he learned to ride a bike. He doesn't need a father who's going to disappear when things get complicated. I'm not going anywhere, Marcus said fiercely. Not this time. I made the biggest mistake of my life when I left you, and I've regretted it every single day since. But I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. Before Sophia could respond, Oliver looked up from his coloring book. Mama, why are you crying? Are you sad? Sophia quickly wiped her eyes and forced a smile. I'm fine, sweetheart, just tired from working all night. Oliver studied her face with the perceptive intelligence that reminded Marcus so much of himself at that age. Then the boy looked at Marcus with an expression that seemed far too wise for his years. "Don't worry, Mr. Blackwood," Oliver said softly. "Mama cries sometimes, but she's really strong. She takes care of everybody." Marcus felt his heart break and heal simultaneously. His son was trying to comfort him, showing the same caring nature that had made Marcus fall in love with Sophia in the first place. In that moment, he realized that she had done an extraordinary job raising their child, giving him the love and stability that Marcus's own privileged but emotionally barren childhood had lacked. "I can see that," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "She's amazing." As Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman with kind eyes, appeared in the doorway to collect Oliver for his promised trip to the park, Marcus watched his son gather his art supplies with careful precision. The boy approached the bed one more time, looking up at Marcus with those familiar blue eyes. "I hope you feel better soon, Mr. Blackwood," Oliver said sincerely. "Maybe when you're all better, you can come visit us sometime. I'd like to show you my computer programs." Marcus looked at Sophia, who nodded almost imperceptibly, understanding that their son's innocent invitation was about to change all their lives forever. "I'd like that very much, Oliver," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the emotions churning in his chest. "I'd like that more than anything." The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the hospital corridors. As Marcus waited anxiously for Oliver's return from the park, he had spent the past 3 hours making phone calls, rearranging meetings, and trying to process the earth-shattering revelation that he was a father. Every decision he had made over the past 7 years suddenly felt hollow and meaningless compared to the 7 years of his son's life he had missed. Sophia had been called away to handle another emergency, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the weight of what he had lost. He found himself staring at the drawing Oliver had left behind, a crayon masterpiece depicting a superhero with dark hair and blue eyes, standing protectively in front of a woman in a white coat and a small boy. The innocent artwork felt like a glimpse into his son's heart, and Marcus wondered if the boy had somehow sensed their connection. His contemplation was interrupted by the sound of expensive heels clicking against the hospital floor. Marcus recognized that precise, determined gait even before his mother appeared in the doorway. Her silver hair perfectly styled and her designer suit immaculate despite the 2-hour drive from the Hamptons. "Marcus," Victoria Blackwood said, her voice carrying the cool authority that had intimidated board members and social rivals for decades. "I came as soon as I heard about your accident. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Mother," Marcus replied, noting how she surveyed the modest hospital room with barely concealed disdain. "Just some bruises and a mild concussion. Nothing serious." Victoria moved closer to the bed, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of his appearance. "You look terrible. I've already spoken to Dr. Hamilton. He's driving in from Manhattan, too. Oversee your care. This place is hardly suitable for a Blackwood." "Dr. Hamilton isn't necessary," Marcus said firmly. "Getting excellent care here." "From whom?" Victoria's tone suggested she doubted any hospital outside of their exclusive medical network could provide adequate treatment. Before Marcus could answer, Sophia appeared in the doorway, her professional smile faltering slightly when she saw his mother. The two women regarded each other with immediate mutual assessment, like predators, sizing up potential threats. "Spess Blackwood," Sophia said politely, extending her hand. "I'm Dr. Vale, your son's attending physician. Wanted to update you on his condition." Victoria shook Sophia's hand briefly, her eyes narrowing as she studied the younger woman's face. "Dr. Vale? How? ... Interesting. And what exactly are Marcus's injuries?" As Sophia launched into a professional summary of his medical status, Marcus watched his mother's face carefully. Victoria had always possessed an uncanny ability to read people and situations, a skill that had made her a formidable force in business and society. He could see her cataloging every detail about Sophia, her confidence, her competence, her beauty, and something else that made Victoria's expression grow increasingly suspicious. "I see," Victoria said when Sophia finished. "And how long have you been practicing medicine, Dr. Vale?" 8 years, Sophia replied, her voice remaining steady despite the subtle interrogation. 8 years, Victoria repeated thoughtfully. And before that, medical school, I assume? Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. His mother was fishing for information, and he could see exactly where this was heading. Columbia, Sophia answered, her professional mask beginning to slip slightly. Columbia, Victoria mused. How coincidental. That's where Marcus completed his medical training before he came to his senses and took over the family business. The tension in the room was palpable now. Marcus started to speak, but Victoria held up a hand to silence him. Her attention focused entirely on Sophia. You know, Victoria continued, her voice deceptively casual, you look very familiar, Dr. Vale. Have we met before? I don't believe so, Sophia said, but Marcus could see the slight tremor in her hands as she adjusted his chart. Strange, Victoria said, moving closer to Sophia. I never forget a face, especially one connected to my son. Are you certain we haven't met? Perhaps at a medical school function, or maybe... Mother, Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying a warning, but Victoria was relentless when she sensed weakness. Or maybe you knew my son personally during his brief, misguided foray into medicine. Before Sophia could respond, the sound of children's laughter echoed from the hallway. Oliver burst through the door, his cheeks flushed from playing outside, followed by Mrs. Patterson, who was carrying a small bouquet of flowers. Mama, Oliver called out, running to Sophia's side. Mrs. Patterson bought me flowers for you, and I caught 3 butterflies in the park, but I let them go because they needed to be free. Oliver's enthusiastic chatter died as he noticed the elegant stranger standing beside Marcus's bed. With the fearless curiosity of childhood, he studied. Victoria, with the same intense focus he had shown Marcus earlier, Victoria, meanwhile, had gone completely still. Her eyes moved from Oliver to Marcus, then back to Oliver, taking in every detail of the boy's appearance. The resemblance was unmistakable. The same dark hair, the same blue eyes, the same strong jawline that had been passed down through generations of Blackwood men. And who is this charming young man? Victoria asked, her voice carefully controlled. This is my son, Oliver, Sophia said, instinctively moving closer to the boy. Oliver, oblivious to the undercurrents in the room, approached Victoria with polite interest. Hello, I'm Oliver Vale. Are you Mr. Blackwood's mother? You have the same eyes as him? And the same eyes as me, too. The innocent observation hit the room like a thunderclap. Victoria's face went pale, then flushed with anger as the implications became clear. She looked from Oliver to Marcus, her expression shifting from shock to fury. Marcus, she said quietly, her voice deadly calm. I need to speak with you privately. Now. No, Marcus said firmly, struggling to sit up straighter in the bed. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. You cannot be serious, after everything we've worked for, everything we've built. You're going to throw it all away for this, this. Careful, Marcus warned, his voice dangerous. You're talking about the mother of my son? Your son? Victoria laughed bitterly. Marcus, you're engaged to Rebecca Sterling. The wedding is in 3 months. You have obligations, responsibilities. Never loved Rebecca, Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. That engagement was about business, about merging our family's interests. You know that. Oliver, sensing the growing tension, moved closer to his mother. Mama, why is everyone upset? Sophia knelt down to Oliver's level, her voice gentle despite the chaos around them. It's okay, sweetheart. Sometimes adults have complicated conversations. Victoria watched this tender interaction with growing alarm. Marcus, think about what you're doing. The Sterling family, the merger, your position in society. You're going to destroy everything for a childhood infatuation and a boy who... A boy who is my son? Marcus said fiercely. My son, mother, your grandson? The words hung in the air like a challenge. Victoria stared at Oliver, who was now looking back at her with curious blue eyes that were identical to her own son's. This is impossible, Victoria whispered. The timing, the circumstances. Marcus, you can't seriously be considering... I'm not considering anything, Marcus interrupted. I'm done considering. I'm done weighing pros and cons, and making decisions based on what's best for the family business. I've spent 7 years living a lie, and I'm not going to spend another day doing it. Victoria's face hardened. What about Rebecca? What about the promises you've made? The commitments? I never committed to loving Rebecca, Marcus said. Quietly, I committed to a marriage of convenience that would benefit both our families, but I won't live that lie anymore. As if summoned by the mention of her name, Rebecca Sterling appeared in the doorway, her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer outfit making her look like she had stepped out of a magazine. She took in the scene with sharp intelligence. Marcus in the hospital bed, the beautiful doctor standing protectively near a young boy, and Victoria looking like she was about to explode. "Marcus, darling," Rebecca said, her voice carrying the cultured tones of someone raised in political circles. "I came as soon as I heard about your accident. Are you all right?" She moved to his bedside, leaning down to kiss his cheek with practiced affection. Marcus endured the contact, but his eyes remained fixed on Sophia and Oliver. "I'm fine, Rebecca," he said quietly, "but we need to talk." Rebecca followed his gaze to Sophia and Oliver, her expression shifting from concern to calculation. Victoria, she had been raised in a world where appearances and alliances mattered more than emotions, and she could sense that something fundamental had shifted. Of course, she said smoothly, "But first, shouldn't you introduce me to your medical team?" The word medical team was delivered with just enough emphasis to make it clear that Rebecca had already assessed Sophia as a potential threat and dismissed her as beneath notice. "This is Dr. Vale," Marcus said carefully, "and her son Oliver." Smile was razor sharp. "How lovely. How fortunate that you're getting such ... dedicated care." Oliver, who had been quiet during this exchange, suddenly stepped forward. "Are you Mr. Blackwood's friend?" he asked Rebecca with innocent directness. "I'm his fiancée," Rebecca replied, her smile becoming more genuine as she spoke to the child. The tension in the hospital room was suffocating as Marcus looked between the three women who represented completely different paths for his future. Victoria stood rigid with barely controlled fury. Rebecca maintained her political smile despite the obvious threat to her plans, and Sophia held Oliver protectively while trying to mask her own heartbreak. "Rebecca," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying a finality that made everyone in the room go still, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it clearly." Rebecca's smile faltered slightly, but she moved closer to the bed with practiced grace. "Of course, darling. Whatever it is, we can work through it together." "No," Marcus said gently but firmly. "We can't, because I'm calling off our engagement." The words dropped into the room like stones into still water, creating ripples of shock that touched everyone present. Victoria gasped audibly. Rebecca's face went pale, and Sophia's eyes widened with surprise. "Marcus," Victoria said sharply, "you cannot be serious. You're clearly not thinking straight. It's the accident, the medication." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years," Marcus interrupted, his gaze never leaving Rebecca's face. "I'm sorry, Rebecca. You deserve someone who loves you completely, and I can't be that person. I never could be." Rebecca's composure cracked for just a moment, revealing the hurt beneath her polished exterior. "Is this about her?" she asked, glancing toward Sophia. "About some childhood romance you think you can recapture?" "This is about honesty," Marcus replied. "About living an authentic life instead of one dictated by other people's expectations. I won't marry you for a business merger, Rebecca. You're worth more than that, and so am I." Oliver, who had been quietly observing the adult drama, tugged on his mother's scrubs. "Mama, why is everyone so upset? Did I do something wrong?" Sophia knelt down to her son's level, her voice gentle, despite the chaos around them. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups have to make difficult decisions." "Is it because I said we all have the same eyes?" Oliver asked, with the perceptive innocence of childhood. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Marcus felt his heart break at his son's words. In trying to protect everyone from the truth, they had created a situation where a 7-year-old boy was blaming himself for adult complications he couldn't possibly understand. "Oliver," Marcus said, his voice warm with paternal love that surprised. Everyone, including himself. You didn't cause any trouble. You're perfect exactly as you are. Victoria watched this exchange with growing alarm. Think about what you're doing. The Sterling merger, the business implications, our family's reputation. Our family's reputation, Marcus repeated, his voice growing stronger. What about our family's happiness? What about love? What about the grandson you didn't even know existed until today? He gestured toward Oliver, who was now looking between the adults with wide, curious eyes. Look at him, Mother. Really look at him. He's brilliant. Kind, loving everything we should want in a Blackwood heir. And I missed 7 years of his life because I was too focused on building an empire instead of building a family. Victoria's face softened slightly as she studied Oliver, her businessman's mind warring with her grandmother's heart. He has the family features, she admitted reluctantly. He has more than that, Marcus said firmly. He has compassion, intelligence, and a mother who raised him to be everything I wish I had been at his age. Rebecca, who had been silent during this exchange, finally spoke. So that's it? You're throwing away everything we've built together for a woman who kept your child from you? She tried to tell me, Marcus said, his voice heavy with regret. I was the one who cut off all contact. I was the one who chose duty over love. And I was the one who missed out on the most important years of my son's life. Sophia, who had been trying to stay out of the conflict, finally spoke up. Marcus, you don't have to do this. We managed fine without you for 7 years, and continue to manage. But I don't want to just manage, Marcus said, his eyes locked on hers. I want to be part of your lives. I want to be the father Oliver deserves and the man you fell in love with all those years ago. People change, Sophia said quietly, but Marcus could hear the hope she was trying to suppress. Some things don't change, Marcus replied. My love for you never changed. I just convinced myself that duty was more important than happiness. I was wrong. Oliver, who had been listening to this exchange with growing excitement, suddenly broke, free from his mother's protective hold, and ran to Marcus's bedside. Does this mean you're my daddy? He asked with the directness that only children possess. The question hung in the air like a prayer. Marcus looked at this beautiful, intelligent boy who shared his eyes and his stubborn chin and felt something shift inside his chest. All the board meetings, all the merger deals, all the business successes that had defined his life for the past 7 years suddenly seemed meaningless compared to this moment. Yes, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm your daddy. And I'm so sorry it took me so long to find you. Oliver's face lit up with pure joy. I knew it. I knew you were special. Can I hug you? Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice, and Oliver carefully climbed onto the bed, wrapping his small arms around his father's neck. The embrace was gentle but fierce, 7 years of misconnection compressed into a single moment of perfect understanding. I love you, Daddy, Oliver whispered against Marcus's ear, using the word with the easy acceptance of childhood. I love you too, son, Marcus replied, his voice breaking on the words. More than you'll ever know. Victoria watched this tender scene with conflicting emotions playing across her face. Despite her anger and disappointment, she couldn't deny the profound love she was witnessing. This wasn't about business or strategy. This was about family. In its purest form, Rebecca, meanwhile, had moved to the window, her back to the room as she processed the end of her carefully laid plans. When she turned around, her expression was sad but resolute. I won't lie and say this doesn't hurt, she said quietly. But I can see that you've found something real here, Marcus. Something I'm not sure we ever had. Rebecca. Marcus started. But she held up a hand. No, let me finish. I've spent so much time planning our future that I forgot to ask if it was what either of us actually wanted. Maybe this is better for both of us. She moved toward the door, then paused. Take care of them, Marcus. They're lucky to have you, even if it took you 7 years to figure it out. After Rebecca left, Victoria remained, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of the scene before her. Finally, she approached Oliver, who was still nestled in his father's arms. So, she said, her voice softer than anyone had heard it all day. You're my grandson. Oliver looked up at her with curiosity rather than fear. Are you my grandmother? I suppose I am, Victoria said, and for the first time in years, her smile was genuine. And I suppose that means we have a lot of catching up to do. As the afternoon sun cast golden light through the hospital window, Marcus looked at his family, his son in his arms, the woman he loved standing beside the bed, and even his mother beginning to soften toward the idea of an expanded family. For the first time in 7 years, he felt like he was exactly where he belonged. "Sophia," he said quietly, catching her hand in his free one, "I know I have a lot to make up for. 7 years of birthdays, bedtime stories, scraped knees, and all the moments I missed. But if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to both of you." Sophia looked at him, seeing not the billionaire CEO who had broken her heart, but the man she had fallen in love with in medical school. The man who had dreamed of helping people, who had held her through difficult nights, who had promised to love her forever. "It won't be easy," she said softly. "Oliver and I have built a life together. We have routines, traditions, a whole world that doesn't include you." "Then let me learn," Marcus said earnestly. "Let me be part of your world instead of asking you to be part of mine. I don't want to change what you've built. I want to add to it." Oliver, who had been quietly listening to this exchange, suddenly perked up. "Does this mean we can be a real family? Like in the movies?" Marcus looked at Sophia, his heart in his eyes. "Only if your mama says yes." Sophia studied his face, seeing the sincerity there, the love that had never truly died despite 7 years of separation. She thought of all the nights she had dreamed, of this moment, all the times she had wished Oliver could know his father, all the love she had tried to bury but never quite managed to kill. "Yes," she whispered, and the word was like a benediction. "Yes, we can be a real family." As Marcus pulled both Sophia and Oliver into his arms, Victoria watched from the corner of the room, her expression thoughtful. She had spent decades building a business empire, but watching her son embrace his family, she realized that some legacies were more important than others. "Well," she said finally, her voice carrying a note of resignation and perhaps even relief, "I suppose I should cancel the wedding preparations and start planning a very different kind of celebration." Outside the hospital window, the spring afternoon was giving way to evening, and the city lights were beginning to twinkle like stars. Inside the room, a family was being born, not through obligation or arrangement, but through love, forgiveness, and the cura.